Hi, my name is Elizabeth De La Garza, and this is my oil presentation for INTS 4350. In this video, we're going to talk about some of the questions that I have is it uncommon for people to stay in work situations that are risky or even dangerous simply because they don't have any other options? Also, thinking back over their past experience, have you ever been tricked or forced into doing any kind of work that you didn't want to do? Um, Sometimes people are prevented from leaving, and it's unfair and unsafe in the work situation by their employers. Have you ever been afraid to leave or quit a work situation due to fears, violence, threats, harm to yourself or your family? Um, Fraud, coercion if we're subject to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, or slavery. Since human resources is responsible for planning and implementing many educational requirements in private and public organizations, it should be administered by an annual education curriculum to all students K through 12 and professional workplaces in some with the age group of human trafficking. Many states have laws that require sex education in schools, but may not focus primarily on identifying the signs of coercion and manipulation of human traffickers. Where human resources stops in teaching people about the signs, lifestyles, effects, treatments, and recovery of human trafficking victims, organizational leadership can help those people that are victims and or recovering victims. Organizational leadership can push legislators to implement new legislation, notify authorities of potential victims, and download data from human traffickers, victims, and techniques used to best to help those people who are recovering. However, there are instances where leadership can become complacent with human traffickers because of ambiguities in the law, confusing the victim with the criminal, or a lack of resources to address the problem. Leadership from the tourism industry has pushed for more training and education in human trafficking to reduce and the movement of victims through these type of businesses. Educating high-risk groups in theory can reduce human trafficking in America. Recent laws have been passed to executive orders issued concerning mandatory human trafficking education in primary and secondary school. Although California has passed, the governor signed the Human Trafficking Prevention, Education, and Training Act, which does allow public schools, educators, and students to train in human trafficking from 7th through 12th grade. It's not the most sweeping human trafficking education requirement in the country. Florida State Board of Education approved a ruling requiring instruction of a child trafficking prevention for students in grades kindergarten through 12. Florida also requires a curriculum planning and delivering documentation pertaining to human trafficking education. Many states in America require some form of human trafficking educations for schools ages students, where there's many that don't. Potential victims of human trafficking have certain characteristics that traffickers gravitate towards. Traffickers will look for at-risk youths and lack of self-confidence, which include immigrants, homelessness, runaways, substance abuse victims, mental health, domestic violence, sexual abuse, and many more. Educating at-risk youth, creating a special program that requires teachers with special needs training. Although public schools have teachers trained in special needs, they are typically not versed in human trafficking, nor can teachers instruct from having experience of being a victim. Victims of human trafficking are, in a unique situation compared to many other crime victims. They fear law enforcement because prostitution charges or illegal entry into America. They fear retribution from traffickers. They also fear information getting back to their family because they have been trafficked. For the reasons, teachers need to be tactful with well planned out lessons and character that is not any offensive towards it. To be effective teachers of human trafficking survivors, they must provide engaging lessons that is not intimidated nor upset those that are trying to reach those who they are trying to reach. People have been through the process of human trafficking and can relate to victims and present information in a way, some teachers may not know how. Although victims of sex trafficking have, in some studies, been identified as at-risk use, those numbers can be verified. A lot of surveys collected from victims have shown the sexual act have always not been provided. These surveys are questionable due to the nature of the ways questions have been written and answered. Data surrounding the human trafficking is questionable at best, highly speculative due to the secrecy of the victims, traffickers, and patrons. Human traffickers Since human traffickers want health workers to earn money, they often use victims to see doctors for illnesses and injuries. These visits give opportunities to the medical professions to identify characteristics of trafficking and report the suspicions to proper authorities. The reason for any medical personnel that visits a patient to be trained and identify characteristics some of the questions that I have is it uncommon for people to stay in work situations that are risky or even dangerous simply because they don't have any other options? Also, thinking back over their past experience, have you ever been tricked or forced into doing any kind of work that you didn't want to do? Sometimes people are prevented from leaving, and it's unfair and unsafe in the work situation by their employers. Have you ever been afraid to leave or quit a work situation due to fears, violence, threats, harm to yourself or your family? Organizational leadership plays a large role in reducing human trafficking in America. Leaders placed in position to reduce human trafficking should have the qualifications needed to accomplish the task. Being able to work with and have a two-way communication stream, it is vital for any leadership position. Someone in the position of human trafficking leadership will have to be trained in all areas of human trafficking, including but not limited to the requirements of the victims and knowledge of the trafficker and their tactics. Laws surrounding human trafficking in their state and their country, cultural issues of immigrants in different parts of the world, issues that medical personnel face when dealing with human trafficking victims, and perspectives of local police. Depending on the agency leaders, they must be familiar with human trafficking ways or laws, whatever their jurisdiction is. There should be some motivation to those around them to communicate well with all parties and treat victims as that, and not have a policy of arrest now and release later. I hope with the research that I have done, our federal system will get in line to reduce trafficking in America, because it is such a big issue right now. Even in Lubbock, you always see on the news that there's this big outbreak, big catch of these people, which I'm so glad to see, but I hope with the years coming, it will drastically decline, and people can be safe out there. So thank you for listening, and have a good one.